Good morning, Rich Tyson here. Last several videos that I've done have been on the principles of learning. And today I want to talk a little more about the content of learning, especially the content that we as leaders ought to set forth for our people. In my strategic outcomes pyramid that I use with my CEOs, the overarching theme has always been the vision of the organization. And the vision is something that is so important to corporate culture, so important to employee competence and engagement. Everyone needs to understand what that vision is. Vision it is described in a variety of ways. Certainly, we look at it as what we can see, but it is also more tangibly in an organization what we feel, what we recognize we're about. Author Simon Sinek says start with why, and the why is, in his opinion, the vision of the organization. It is why we exist, why we do what we do. I would take it even farther and say vision is about what we're becoming. And so for all of us in an organization, small or large, it is important that we have a shared vision of where this organization is going, what we are trying to accomplish. In the book of Proverbs in the Bible, it says, where there is no vision, the people perish. I believe that's absolutely true as well for business organizations. And so it is incumbent upon us to define a great vision as leaders and to communicate it well. It is certainly for any of us in a leadership role, especially a founder of an organization, to have some vision going into this business as it's an entrepreneurial venture. But over time, vision can have some evolution to it, and in fact, probably should have some as we collaborate with our people to better wordsmith and define what that vision is. I have often in small organizations, small to medium-sized companies, have, with the approval of the CEO or the founder, have asked people within the organization what they understood the vision to be. Often what I have found is that the vision is not clear, that perhaps people know essentially what we do in an organization, but we don't have that sense of unified vision of where we're going and what we're trying to accomplish. And so it's very important, I think, to take the time to elaborate on that, to articulate it and make sure that everyone can, at some level, be unified in understanding what that vision is. I have also gone a bit farther than that. Again, as I illustrate this, I show vision as overarching the corporate strategic outcomes pyramid that we utilize. But I believe vision also should extend then into what we do on a day-to-day basis. How does that vision articulate into a day-to-day mission? If our vision is to do a certain thing, then or to become a certain thing as an organization over time, what do we do to get there? How does that articulate into a value proposition for our customers? How does that value proposition translate into our day-to-day activities? An example I can share with you. One of my great clients, manufacturing company, was producing a product that was essentially a safety mechanism for use in gymnasiums. Their product was used to secure backboards from falling, so that this was used within school systems and all over North America. And they had a minor share of market over time. It grew, and they were consistent with what they were doing. This company had been in business many years. In fact, at the time I was working with them, they were a second-generation company. Well, during the course of doing business, one of their competitors, who had the major share of market, had a failure, and the backboard fell and killed a young man. And of course, this changed things markedly in terms of people's trust and faith in the competitive product. And it brought a lot more business over to my client. Now, they didn't revel in the fact that their competitor had a failure that brought them business, but it did cause them to reflect and say, is really our vision as an organization. In addition to the backboard product, they also produced a variety of aluminum products. They were an aluminum foundry, including the wheels that go on the chair lifts for ski resorts. And it occurred to them and all of us that their real vision for the organization was to create peace of mind. When school districts, when recreational facilities would buy their backboard security system, they were looking for peace of mind. They wanted to install it and not worry about it anymore and know that it would never fail. When their wheels went on the chair lifts, those customers didn't want to have to worry that that wheel would fracture and break and kill someone. And so peace of mind was what they felt like their vision was, that they were a company that was in the business of creating ongoing peace of mind of customers. When the quality that they put out was consistent, that a customer would never have to worry. And so that sense of peace of mind became very important. They shared this with their employees, and their employees resonated with it. They said, well, that's great. We want peace of mind in that we do a great job for the company. And as a result of that, we keep our jobs and we can enjoy job security over time. And so this sense of peace of mind as the why of the organization, the overarching vision of the company, what they were about, began to unify them even more thoroughly than they had over many, many years before. Now, how did that vision translate into action? Well, it caused their people on the plant floor to be even more focused, more intense on making sure that they did a good job, that the products they put out were high quality, that they met every stress test, that everything came out as it should. And so that issue of vision translated into action. And that became their mission, to do even higher quality work than they'd ever done before. Then from there, the issue is including in the vision that I treat as an overarching statement, we want to know what the values of the organization are, and we want to translate those. And as leaders, we want to teach our people what those values are. Another client I had years ago, as I would come into their building to visit with them, there was a statement of corporate values. Two of those values I wondered about. One was integrity. Not that I didn't think they should have integrity, but it caused me to say, okay, well, what does integrity really mean to you? The second was profitability. Well, again, I have no problem with that. My job as an executive coach is to help them create profitability. However, as I looked at it, I thought, I wonder if I shouldn't ask this CEO, do those two values ever get in conflict? Do they ever come into conflict between each other? And so I did. And he assured me, he said, Rich, this just isn't something we really need to be talking about. I have other issues we need to consider. Don't worry about it. Those two never come into conflict. My people know that we need to make profits in an honorable and high integrity way. End of subject. Well, that was the end of subject for some time. But toward the end of the year, he invited me into his executive team meeting just to kind of sit in and see what they were doing. And toward the end of that meeting, he asked me, he said, do you have any questions for our executive team? And I said, well, I do have one. I noticed that your value statement has profitability and integrity. Do those two ever come in conflict? And the CEO looked at me like, oh, here he goes again. And I said, I know I raised this with you before and you kind of dismissed it, but I was just wondering, maybe I could ask your people that. He said, well, you have. So he turned to his people and he said, those ever come in conflict? And for the most part, people said no and kind of blank stares. And I said, well, could I give you a kind of just a case study example to see how that would resonate with you? I said, let's suppose that your top salesman is visiting your top customer sometime toward the end of the year, about like now. And as he's visiting with the purchasing agent there, he says to the purchasing agent, well, we have the paperwork ready to sign the contract for the upcoming year. We're so pleased to continue to have your business and would just like to have you ink that, make sure that we have the contract ready to go so we can serve you in the upcoming year. Well, the purchasing agent looks at the salesman and says, you know what, you guys, you're too expensive. You're going to have to sharpen your pencils. I will not sign a contract right now because I think we just need a better deal. We're going to put this business out for bid. Well, your salesman's a little discouraged, but he says, well, I understand that can happen. He said, let's go back through the bid process. We'll, on what basis do you want to do that? He says, sometime in the early new year, we need to do that. So the salesman turns on his heel. He begins to walk out the door. As he's leaving, the purchasing agent says, well, wait just a minute. He says, I think if you were to have a big screen TV on my porch on Christmas Eve, that we could probably go ahead and sign that contract today. Could I have your commitment to do that? I said, now, this is all hypothetical, but what if that happened? Profitability and integrity are now kind of butting heads against each other. This isn't quite as clear as it has been in the past. And the CEO said, well, Rich, this just doesn't happen. And then I looked across the table at his sales manager, and he looked like I had hit him in the gut. And he looked up and he said, how did you know? And the CEO was shocked. He said, what do you mean, how did you know? And he said, well, it wasn't a big screen TV. It was a little fishing boat. And he said, you've got to be kidding me. This actually happened? And he said, yes, it did. Well, you can imagine that put kind of a pallor over the meeting. What I asked then was, I said, values are important. We do need to state what's important to us, but we must go through hypotheticals and even real circumstances to say, what will we do when those values work against each other? One of the great functions of a CEO is to bring together his people or her people and to discuss these kind of issues, to ideally keep them in the hypotheticals so that they don't become real. So, vision. The vision of a leader needs to be reinforced all the time. In my last video, I talked about the PACER learning or training model. Principles. Vision is a function not only of what the company should become, but the principles by which they function. And so based on that, for each of you in your leadership roles, I encourage you to think deeply about what your why is, your purpose is, what that vision should articulate to your people, how it becomes what they do on a day-to-day basis, and what values will drive their specific actions. Unless we give articulation to these things, unless we talk about them on a regular basis, our people will be left to their own conclusions. In concluding this today, I want to just tell the story of one of my clients who had worked for an organization who said that their overarching value was, we do whatever it takes. Now, I think what the founder, the CEO, wanted in that statement was that we'll bend over backwards to serve our customers. But what that became, without articulation, without definition, was something they had never expected, because doing whatever it takes became cutting corners and doing things in a less than ethical way. And that became, well, if we have license to do that in order to serve our customers, I guess we have license maybe to do a little bit of pilferage, a little bit of embezzlement, a little bit of justification of things that ultimately ended up being offenses to the organization that ended up in litigation and even imprisonment of some of their key players. We have to talk about what's important, and we have to get it down into a day-to-day discussion. Those principles must be discussed. The application of them must be discussed, how we apply them within the organization, how we apply them hypothetically. We must talk about what our commitment is and how much of a cost we're willing to bear in order to do things in the right way. And we must test all of these things in the crucible of experience. I hope this resonates with you today. This is such an important topic and issue for leaders. And I look forward, as you listen to these words, if you would like to have some conversation with me on these things or any of our people, please get in touch with me because these are such important issues. Thank you for your time. I look forward to the next opportunity to have a video discussion with you good folks.